Hello students, today we would be studying history chapter number 9, reappearance of urbanization. Now why do you think that the urban settlement disappeared after the Indus Valley civilization? Now do you think that how did all the urban civilization disappear after the Indus Valley civilization? Archaeological excavations have revealed that urban communities flourished in India in the Indus Valley civilization as early as 2500 BC. In the early Vedic period, the people were pastoralistic and the concept of urbanization did not occur to them till the later part of the Vedic age, when people started farming and settling down in other places. Now, in the early Vedic age, people did not think about settling down, but they started thinking about it in the later Vedic age. Gradually, the use of better iron implements led to surplus production in agriculture. Now, during agriculture, they started using iron equipments which led to the surplus, or they had lot of production of agriculture. It was this surplus production that led to the growth of trade and commerce and eventually to the development of towns and cities. Now, when they had surplus food, they started trading with it. So, this led to the introduction of trade and commerce, and then they started settling down in one place. It was during the Mauryan period that many cities and towns emerged in different parts of India. Now during the Mauryan period, many cities and towns developed in parts of India. Historians believe that the second phase of urbanization in India began around 300 BC. Now the historians believe that during the second phase of urbanization began during 300 BC. The period of second urbanization saw large-scale expansion of town life in the Gangetic Plain. Now, the period of second urbanization saw large expansion of town life in the Gangetic Plains. Now, the development of agriculture. The beginning of the Iron Age resulted in the forging of better tools and weapons, as iron was a better metal than copper in terms of sturdiness. Now, in the beginning of the Iron Age, there were many better tools were formed, as iron was much harder than copper. The Aryans who settled down in villages near the Indo-Gangetic plains started clearing forests with the help of iron axes for agriculture. Now the Aryans who settled down near forests, they started clearing up the forest with iron tools for the use of agriculture. They started clearing the forest. The Aryans started clearing the forest with the use of iron axes. Earlier the people used to burn the forest down to clear the ground for cultivation. Now earlier people used to do what they used to do. They used to burn the forest down. They used to burn the entire forest to clear up for the agriculture. But now, as they had iron axes or they knew the use of iron, they started cutting the trees and clearing up the areas for the use of agriculture. Now iron was effectively used in agriculture. Now iron started to be used effectively in agriculture. The iron plug share was also introduced at the time. Now the iron plug share, which is the main cutting edge, the main cutting part of the plug, which they use for cutting things, was used in agriculture. They help in plugging deeper into the hard soil and prepared the ground for cultivation. Now with iron plugs that nowadays you see they use in tractors, that it helps cutting the ground more deeper, the soil more deeper, which helps in agriculture. By this time, farmers had become better equipped in agricultural practices and methods. Now by this time, farmers had become better. They knew better techniques of farming, and they became better and better in the farming. They learned transplantation, which means that they grew paddy seedlings and then transported them to bigger fields. Now they learned the process of transplantation. Transplantation means growing of rice from one place and then taking it and planting it in a larger field. So that way they used to grow rice, and that is paddy, and then they used to transfer it into larger fields. They increased agricultural produce twofold. They increased the agricultural produce into double. Irrigation facilities had also improved by this period and contributed greatly towards farming. Now the irrigation facilities also had improved, and they contributed together to the farming. Canals, dams, wells, tanks and artificial lakes were built to help irrigate the farm. Now canals, lakes, dams and artificial tanks or artificial lakes were built to help in the farming or the irrigation. Irrigation not only increased farming productivity but also increased revenue. Now irrigation also increased the farming productivity but it also increased the revenue. The more on agriculture produced, the more taxes were paid to the ruler. Now the more the person the larger number of field he had or the more he would produce, the more tax he would have to pay to the ruler. And the more developed the king gets and the more development the kingdom would get. People learn to grow 3 crops a year. Now people learn to grow at least 3 crops in a year. These innovations and developments in the field of agriculture ensured a surplus of food grain. Now these innovations and developments in the field of agriculture ensured a surplus of food grains. Now the use of labor. Before large scale settlements had sprung up in the Gangetic plain, the area was covered with thick forests and marshy land. Now before people started to settle down in the plains, the area was covered with marshy lands or with thick forest. Laborers were required to clear the land for cultivation. Now people required laborers or more people to clear up the land for cultivation. People now felt the need for an administrative system to control and direct such labor. Now people felt the need for administrative system and much labor, and different agricultural communities came up in different regions. In South India, large landowners were known as Velaras. Now in South India, large landowners were known as Velaras, and in North India they were known as Gram Bhojaka, and in North India they were known as Gram Bhojakas. They employed plugmen or had slaves to do their work. They employed people to plug their field or they had slaves who would do their work for them. Independent farmers known as Grihapatis were small landowners. Now independent farmers who were small and could not hire any laborers, they were small landowners. So they worked with their family on their land. Along with the growth of agriculture, there was growing needs for skilled workers like craftsmen, metal workers, potters, chariot makers and many more. Now along with agriculture, there was growing needs. There started being needs for different arts and agriculture like craftsmen, metals workers, potters, chariot makers and more. Now formation of guilds and shrenis. The workers organized themselves into guilds and shrenis. Now the workers, they organized themselves into small communities which they call guilds or shrenis. The guilds formulated rules and regulations which catered to the needs of the workers. Now the guilds, they formulated or they made rules and regulations which were for the people or the workers. They ensured that the workers acquired a good supply of raw material. Now they made sure that the workers who were in the guilds, they had good raw materials which helped them to work. They also imparted the training required for particular craft. They also provided the training that was required for a particular craft. The guilds also introduced weight and measures and provided a check on the quality of good produce. Now the guilds also introduced weights and measures, and they also had a check on the quality of the produce. Matters pertaining to the price of goods and the wages of laborers were all decided by those who headed the guild. Now the leaders of the guilds, they decided the matters like the pricing of the goods and the quality of the goods. Now next, increase in trade. Now we will study about the increase in trade. Now due to the increase in agriculture production and the development of new craft industries, towns became good marketplaces and centers for trade. Now when agricultural produce increased and the development of new crafts came, there were need for industries, and there were need for new towns and cities or centers from where people could come and trade. Villagers producing surplus grain would transport them to nearby towns and exchange their surplus grain for the goods produced in those towns. Now the villagers would exchange their surplus grain in towns and would take in exchange whatever is being produced in that town. Like suppose a villager is producing has a surplus of wheat, he will go and exchange wheat for something that he requires like corn or rice or some other thing that he would require. He would go and exchange it. This system of marketing is called barter system. Now this system of marketing was called barter system. At times the selected marketplaces were located on the trade routes. Now at selected times the marketplaces were located on the trade routes. These provided to be various favorable for the towns as different types of goods were brought in from distant villages so that they could be bartered there. Now this proved to be very favorable or very good as many places or many things were exchanged in those towns or cities. Farmers favored such towns too as the variety of goods available for barter was small. Now farmers would like these towns as they had a lot of variety of things to exchange in barter system. The process of urbanization was fast and more intense in such places. Now the process of urbanization was very fast and more intense in such places. Ujjain was the most important urban center to grow out of such a process. Now Ujjain was the most important center to grow out of such a process. Trade improved road connectivity and the transport system. Now trade also improved the road connectivity of connecting places through road and the transport system. A network of good roads connected important cities like Taxila, Ujjain, Mathura, Prayag, Kashi, Gaya, Patliputra and Vaishali. Now through a good network of roads, there were many cities or towns connected like Taxila, Ujjain, Mathura, Prayag, Kashi, Gaya, Patliputra and Vaishali. Rivers were used for transportation and that led to the emergence of port cities. Now rivers were also used for transportation and this led to the emergence or the beginning of port cities, which in turn promoted inland trade, which in turn also promoted inland trade. Trading networks not only emerged within India but also with other countries like Sri Lanka and Burma. Now trading was not only carried out within India, it was carried out from India to other countries like Sri Lanka and Burma. A large number of Roman gold and silver coins have been discovered in Indian ports, primarily the ones located in the south of India. Now in Indian ports, a large number of Roman coins have been discovered from the south of India. Besides this, India was famous for its ivory work. Now India was very famous for its ivory goods, its craft, medicine, essential and oils. Some important trading ports were Brigugacha and Arikamedu. Brigugacha and Arikamedu were very important trading ports. Trades also flourished after coins came into use. Now after the use of coins, trade started flourishing more and more. Now use of coins. Now how they use the coins, we will study that. Before the use of coins, people used the system of barter for goods and services. Now as we have studied earlier, before the use of coins, people used the system of exchange that is called barter system. This means that they exchange goods among themselves, means they exchange the goods that they had with other people for the goods that they needed, that is among themselves. In the Mauryan period, coins came to be issued. Now in the Mauryan period, the king issued coins such as silver punchmark coins, with the first to be used followed by copper coin. Now silver, that were punchmark coins, these were the first to be used and after them they came copper coins. Since then goods and services came to be exchanged for coin. Since then they exchanged goods and services for the exchange of coins. Several punchmark coins have been found at various sites. Now several punchmark coins have been found at various sites. Now the growth of urban centers. Urban centers had specific functions and were of different types. Now the urban setups or urban centers had different functions and were of different types. They were in contact with each other to fulfill their needs. Now they were in contact with each other to fulfill their basic needs. Powerful Mahajanpads, which had a capital, became places where administrative and official matters were looked after. Now powerful Mahajanpads became capital cities where administration and official matters were seen to. Towns like Madurai, Patliputra and Ujjain developed as capital cities. Now towns like Patliputra, Madurai and Ujjain, they developed into capital cities. Some towns were used for exchange of surplus production. Now some towns were used for exchange of surplus production and came to be used as markets or center of trade, and they came to be used as markets. Like today we go to the markets, we get many things. So they came to be known as markets. These towns were called market towns. Now these towns were also called market towns. Trading was also done through seas and these developed into port town. Now trading was developed through seas and these places were developed into port town. Places where major religions developed became important religious town. Now places where major religions developed became important religious towns. Some cities served as a center for arts and craft such as Vaishali and Varanasi. Kodumanal in Tamil Nadu was rich in mineral resources and became an industrial center for semi-precious stones like sapphire and quartz. Towns like Mathura, Amravati and Kondapur were located in important trade routes and became important trading centers. Like important things were traded or many traders came to these cities to trade. Now the sources of history. The last paragraph is sources of history. We learn about the history of this period from various sources. Now from various sources we learn about the history of this period. Like coins tell us about the period, how rich the kingdom was. Now from the coins we get the information about how rich the kingdom was, which country it traded with, now which country it had trade routes with and how people lived. The Jataka tales and Sangam literature were two works that tell us about the period. Now the Jataka tales or Sangam literature were two works or literatures that tell us about this period. Accounts written by various travelers from around the world who visited during the time also highlighted important features of the time. Now many travelers came during that period to visit India. So they have given many, in their books they wrote many accounts about the travel or how the administration was during that time. This include extremely fine pottery known as the archaeological findings also help archaeological reconstruct history. Now archaeological findings, now many things the archaeologists have found and that help us to reconstruct the history. Like pottery mostly found in northern parts of the subcontinent. Like most of the subcontinent, northern parts of the subcontinent there was pottery found through which the archaeologists could construct the past of the history. It was polished and sophisticated and archaeologists believe that it was used by rich people of that period. Now the pottery was polished and sophisticated and the archaeologists believe that it was used by the rich people of that period. So this is the end of the chapter. We will start soon with the next chapter.